everybody. My name is Mars. You can call me MG if you would like, and today I have for you my June reading wrap-up. We are halfway through the year. Crazy to think about, but it's fine. This happens every year. Around this time, I'm always like, whoa, I can't believe we're halfway through. But that's how time works. Now, in June, I had a bit of a tumultuous reading month. I had some books that I thought I would love and ended up not really enjoying, and then I had other books that I thought would just be okay and I ended up absolutely loving, and I had everything in the middle. So now that this car has driven past, why don't we just get right into talking about the books? So the first book that I picked up was A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher, and I really think I just need to admit to myself that T. Kingfisher is not a favorite author. Everyone loves her books. Like, everyone I see online raves about T. Kingfisher, and I've read like 5 or 6 of her books at this point, and all of them have been at most middle of the road for me, and that's where A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking falls. I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. I feel like 7 out of 10 is higher than I feel about it, but a 6 out of 10 is too low, so I guess it's like a 6.5. Like, I enjoyed it, but there were definitely things that I didn't love, and it's just the writing style that really gets me in every T. Kingfisher book. The writing style just is not compatible with me as a reader, and I feel like I have to fight myself to read and enjoy the characters and the story because the way it's actually presented to me isn't my favorite, you know? And so I'm going to continue reading some T. Kingfisher books if they sound like they would be interesting, but I'm going to go into them with the expectations that I'm probably not going to love it, but I'm going to have a fun time reading it. It's just going to be middle of the road. There have been some that I did not like at all. I've DNF'd T. Kingfisher before, but we're going to hope that I actually enjoy any that I pick up in the future. Then I picked up Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. Darcy Coates is another author that I feel like I should love more than I do. The first couple of books that I read by her, I absolutely adored, but everyone since then have kind of just gone downhill for me, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting used to how she writes her horror, and it just isn't horror to me anymore, like it's not scaring me, or whatever it is, but this one, I feel like the beginning was so like slow and convoluted, and not in a like horror way, because I do enjoy slow horror or quiet horror, whichever way you want to call it, where you get that like creeping sensation and it doesn't really amp up till the end. I enjoy that kind of horror. That wasn't this. It just felt very like bogged down in descriptions that weren't actually scaring me or creeping me out or anything. The like big climax though, that was actually terrifying. I would say maybe like 70 to 90% in the story, genuinely terrifying, and I loved it. And then the ending just fell flat, like the big conclusion, it felt a little bit too, and then they all lived happily ever for a horror novel. So yeah, I enjoyed this, but I didn't love it. And even though I'm trying to limit the number of series that I start, you will see I start even more series later on in the month. But the first one that I started in June was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is the first book in the Shepherd King duology, and I've just been hearing about this for so long that I was like, you know what? I gotta finally check this out and see what it's all about. And I adored this. 10 out of 10, favorite read of the month. It was so good. This is actually a buddy read with Anna. I will leave her channel linked below, Anna Robbins. She makes videos here on YouTube. She's a good friend of mine. Although the buddy part of the buddy read is a little bit skewed because I read it at the beginning of the month because my Libby hold was running out of time, whereas she had other books where her library holds were running out of time, so she had to put it off to the end of the month, but we still have been chatting, and like every time I finish reading, not every time, there were some chapters I didn't say stuff about, but most chapters I left like an entire paragraph of my thoughts in her DMs on Discord, and I spoiler warned so that when she gets to them, she could just unspoiler it and read my thoughts, and it's just super fun, We have tentatively talked about doing the same thing for book 2, which, let me tell you, I'm going to be reading in July. Like, if you saw my TBR video, you would know I'm so freaking hyped. So I feel a little less bad about starting a new series because I'm going to be completing it right away. These cars, man, they're so rude. But yeah, I loved everything about One Dark Window, the characters, the world, the magic. Some of the names of the characters were a little silly. Like, why is the one character Raven spelled Ravyn? I did laugh at that, but genuinely, this book was so good and it was exactly what I needed after two kind of mediocre books that I expected to like more than I did. After that, I picked up Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series, and I was so highly anticipating this after I read Every Heart a Doorway a couple of months ago, which I absolutely loved. It was one of my favorite reads of, I think, was that May that I read it? I think it was early May. I really loved it. And then Down Among the Sticks and Bones is the like origin story, I guess you could say, for two of my favorite characters in Every Heart a Doorway, Jack and Jill. We get to see them in their portal world, and it was so good. The moors, fantastic setting, absolutely obsessed. I didn't give this the full 10 out of 10 stars. I did put it down as a 9 out of 10 because it just felt like there was a little bit missing, and I can't quite put my finger on what it was, but I just wanted a teeny tiny bit more out of this. But I still had a fabulous time, and I cannot wait to continue on with this series and see all of these other character stories. And then we're back to books that I thought I would enjoy more than I did, and the book that I read was Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This was good, it just wasn't great. I, up to this point, had only read Junji Ito's like one-shots, his little short stories, I guess, where it's like a one chapter of manga story, and this was his first longer work that I read, and it didn't hit for me. It didn't feel scary. It was creepy and it was weird for sure, but I wasn't really like hooked into the horror at any point. And then the ending just didn't do it for me. It kind of just happened and I was like, "Oh, well, I guess that's one way to end it." So, I did enjoy it. I loved the art. The art was phenomenal as always, but the story itself wasn't what I expected it to be, so I didn't absolutely love it like I wanted to. The next book I read was Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor by Shirin J. Zhao. This is their middle grade debut, and this was so much fun. I had a great time with it. It is often compared to Percy Jackson, which, if you see this entire shelf up here, is all of my Rick Riordan books. He's one of my favorite authors, so that had me super excited for this, and I can see the comparison. Personally, I would say it's less like Percy Jackson and more like the Kane Chronicles in the way things are done. But I understand that Percy Jackson is like the big name series and the Kane Chronicles is kind of a spin off. So I get why people say it's like Percy Jackson, but this was so good. I loved the character work and I loved getting to learn about Chinese history. So basically, this follows Zachary Ying and he kind of learns to channel this emperor of China. I think it's the first emperor of China, if I remember correctly. It's been a couple of weeks since I read this book. Um, and him and two other kids who also channel ancient emperors of China are trying to like stop this evil thing from happening. It's very tech heavy. Shirin J. Zhao is a sci-fi writer, and I feel like I always forget that because it's like sci-fi stories, but with fantasy vibes to me. That's how I feel about the Iron Widow series and this book as well. It feels so fantasy to me, even though it is most definitely science fiction. I guess science fantasy is a term, but I don't know. I had a wonderful time with this, and I really hope we get to hear about the sequel soon because it definitely ends on a big cliffhanger, and I want to know what happens next. So, Shirin, if you're out there, I know that you've talked about being not a very fast writer. I understand, but like, I'm very excited. Whether you put out this second book first or Iron Widow 3, either way, I want them. I'm so excited. Then I picked up Long Bright River by Liz Moore, and I ended up DNFing this a little past the 20% mark. I I don't know. I didn't know a ton about this going into it, and if I did, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. I went into this with the knowledge that it is a thriller that takes place in Philadelphia, and I live in Philadelphia and want to read more books set in Philadelphia, so I was like, cool, I like thrillers. Let's do this. I didn't realize that it was a crime thriller that follows a police officer, which is something that I'm not a fan of in books, and I didn't realize that it dealt with the opioid epidemic, which is something I don't really want to read about in this way. Uh, like I said, I live in Philadelphia. I've seen the opioid epidemic kind of play out in front of me, like, I've witnessed things, and I read for escapism. I don't want to read about that kind of thing because then it doesn't really feel like escapism. And if it was like a fantasy take on that sort of thing, that I would consider escapism and I would be into reading. But the fact that it is contemporary and like set in the real world and dealing with this actual very real thing that I've seen, I didn't want to continue reading. So unfortunately, it was a DNF. I might check out Liz Moore's other books. I know she had one come out sometime last year. I think it was like The God of the Woods that got super high praise. So I might check that out. But Long Bright River just was not for me. And then I started another series and I read God Killer by Hannah Kaner. I read this on recommendation from my friend Violet. She, a year and a half ago at this point, because it was Christmas 2023, gave me a list of 10 books that she thought I would love and why she would think that. And I've very slowly been working my way through this list. I think I'm more than halfway through. I think I've read 6 at this point. But God Killer was on there, and she was right. I did really love this. I read it physically while listening to the audiobook, and I really think that was the way to go because this is high fantasy, and some of the concepts got a little bit confusing, but I feel like I'm able to follow along more when I have it audibly as I'm reading with my eyeballs. I feel like that's the most immersive way that I could take in a story, and I really, really enjoyed this. This is another book that ended on a cliffhanger, but luckily there is a sequel out, and also the third book. This is a completed series, so fingers crossed I can read the other 2 books in the series somewhat soon and complete it and love them just as much as I loved this first book. After that, I felt like I should do some balancing of my series and actually continue one instead of starting another one. So I read A Restless Truth by Freya Marski. This is the second book in the Last Binding series, I believe is what it's called. It is the sequel to A Marvelous Light, and it follows the sister of one of the main characters in the first book. And these are historical fantasy romance books. They are queer, absolutely fantastic, and the magic system is so cool. I really enjoy it. But this follows Maud, and she is on a ship back from the US to England, and the woman that she is on the ship with, she's kind of acting as like an assistant to her, gets murdered. And so they have to solve this murder and keep this magical artifact safe. And along the way, she falls in love. And I do like the dynamic of Maud and her love interest. It just feels super duper rushed because I feel like the entire story takes place over literally 4 days. And it's just not enough time for me personally to believe a romance like that. I feel like if it had been extended over a couple of weeks at least, I would have been more gung ho about it. But as it stands, it wasn't really my favorite. But I do still like them together, and I am so excited to read the third book in the series. We get to see both of the members of the couple that the third book follows in this one. We met one of them in book 1, and then we met the other one in this second book, and I really already love their dynamic, so I don't know who's honking out there. That's very rude. But yeah, I really want to finish out this series. And then I picked up none other than A Backhanded Compliments by Katie Chandler, another sapphic romance. I did not mean to read two sapphic romances back to back, it kind of just happened that way, but this is Katie's debut novel. Katie is another writer friend of mine. I have such amazing friends, guys. I love them all so much. But this is her debut novel that came out this month, and it is a sapphic rivals to lovers tennis romance, professional tennis players. And they happen to be soulmates because soulmates actually exist in this world. And I thought this was so fabulous. I loved Jules and Luca together. I thought they were great. I also really enjoyed the discussion of soulmates and everything. It wasn't just like, oh, if two people are soulmates, that means they're in love and they're gonna be together and happy forever. Like, it definitely goes deeper than that, and there's discussions on different things. And I just had an absolutely fabulous time. I did vlog my experience reading this, so check that out if you were interested. I can't wait to get my hands on the next book because it's not quite a series, but they are like connected standalones. Katie did sign a two-book deal for this, and the second book follows the sister of one of these characters and her whole romance situation. And hearing Katie talk about it as she's been writing it, I'm like, gimme, I want it right now. But alas, I have to wait until next year, and you bet I will be buying it within release week the same way I did this one because it was so good. Also, this cover is just super cute. Perfect summertime vibes. Highly recommend. After that, I read Dating and Dragons by Christy Boyce, which is technically completing a series. According to Goodreads, Dungeons and Drama and Dating and Dragons is a series, although they are completely separate. The only thing that connects them is that they are YA romances involving D&D, although we do get the teeniest, tiniest cameo of a character from book one in the second book, Dating and Dragons, and I had a good time with this. I didn't love it as much as I liked Dungeons and Drama. I feel like Dungeons and Drama was just chef's kiss perfection. It had everything I wanted. This one, the romance felt a little bit insta-lovey, and like in YA, with like high school age characters, I can forgive insta-love usually because high schoolers tend to be a little bit dramatic about their emotions. It's just how high school aged people work. They're still learning how to figure out emotions. I'm still trying to figure out emotions and I'm in my 20s, but that's besides the point. So yeah, I can usually forgive insta love in YA books, but it just felt a little bit much. I still really, really enjoyed it. The atmosphere and the writing style is just so good. I will read probably anything that Christy Boyce writes because I just had a phenomenal time slipping into the story and getting to know all of the characters. It's so much fun. I highly recommend if you want a cute little YA nerdy romance. And then we had my second DNF of the month, which was Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. I got to about 28% in this book and just could not continue on. This was a reread for me. I read this a long, long time ago, and I figured I better reread it and see if I want to continue on with the trilogy because it's just been sitting on my shelf for years. Unfortunately, I will not be continuing on with the series because I did not enjoy this. I just didn't connect with the characters, and the writing style was also really weird to me. I don't know quite how to explain it, but it was just kind of jarring the way things were written. And so I realized one day while I was sitting here reading it, I was like, wow, I could put this down and not pick it back up and not care the slightest. So that's exactly what I did. So this will be going to a little free library and hopefully someone else out there enjoys it more. And next we get into a little string of surprising favorites, the first of which is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This was the pick of the month for the Nostalgia Trade Book Club, which is run by my friend Violet, whom I've mentioned already in this video. So we had a nice little discussion about this, and I did not expect to love this as much as I did. I never read The Outsiders in school or anything. I've never seen the movie. all I knew was that it was kind of about like rival gangs, and the main character was named Ponyboy, and the line "Stay Gold, Ponyboy," because everyone knows that line. So I didn't quite know what I was getting into, but I really enjoyed this, and I really, really enjoyed the discussion that Violet and I had along with Sam, who was also at the live show discussion. I thought we talked about a lot of really good stuff. But I kind of wish that I had read this in school, because the main character Ponyboy, he is 14, and it deals with a lot of like teenage emotions and things, like a teenager trying to figure out the world. And I think I would have gotten a lot more out of it had I read this when I was around that age, but now at 26, I am definitely not a teenager anymore. So it was just a little bit bittersweet reading it, because I know I could have gotten a lot more out of this had I read it when I was in school, but I still really, really enjoyed this. I do think I'm going to be unhauling my copy. I got it out of a little free library, so I'm just going to put it right back in one. It is pretty beat up. It's got like pet bite marks in the corner, but the main reason why I want to unhaul this copy and get a different one is because this has deckled edges, which are the devil. I hate deckled edges. So, yeah, gonna get rid of this copy, but I do want to own it physically in a different form at some point. And then we had another classic that I did not read in school, and this was my first time picking up, and that was Lord of the Flies by William Golding. And I loved this. This was so good. Cannot believe someone's doing yard work right now, but I'm just going to do my best to talk over it, and hopefully it's not too obnoxious, because I literally only have a few books left to talk about. But yes, I read Lord of the Flies for the first time, and I had a great time with it. I genuinely loved it. For the most part, it was just good. It wasn't great. But then the ending, the last couple of chapters, blew me away. I will be rereading this in the future. I'm gonna consider this one of my favorite classics because I just had a fabulous time. And this was part of a vlog that I did where I read Lord of the Flies, and then I picked up some retellings of it. So the last two books I've talked to you about are those retellings. So first up, we have Beauty Queens by Libba Bray, and this is a satirical comedy retelling of Lord of the Flies, where it is beauty queens, like beauty pageant contestants, who land on this island, and it's so freaking funny. This was a reread for me, but I read it like 10 plus years ago, so I didn't remember much. And I gave this a 10 out of 10. Like, I absolutely adored this book. And Libba Bray is quickly becoming potentially a favorite author. I do have to read more books from her before I can solidify her as a favorite, but I think she could be. But this had a lot of representation and discussion that you wouldn't really expect out of I think this was like 2011 YA novel. It talked a lot about the way POC people, the P stands for people, whatever, but the way, like, in this instance, it is a black character and an Indian character, how they are kind of pitted against each other when it comes to Eurocentric beauty standards, which is a very big focus of this book, being that the characters are beauty pageant queens. There's talk about queer characters, both in terms of sexuality and in gender. There's a transgender character, and she's actually one of my favorite characters. I love her so much. There's talk about capitalism and consumerism, and like I said, it is satire, so it is extremely over the top, but it's still so much fun and very poignant at times. So, highly recommend checking this out. I had a great time, and I just need to read more Libba Bray because clearly I enjoy her books a lot. And the other retelling that I picked up was Lord of the Flyfest by Goldie Moldavsky, and unfortunately, I ended off that vlog and the month as a whole with a DNF. I got about 25% into this book, and I just couldn't do it. The characters were so annoying. The kind of like twist for this retelling is that it is kind of a combination of Lord of the Flies and Fire Fest, which happened several years ago. That's what the Fly Fest is. It's supposed to be this big music event on this Caribbean island, and our main character, Rafi, goes because she has a podcast and she wants to kind of like uncover the truth about this one musician who's going to be at this event. But I don't know, I just hated all of the characters. I thought they were so annoying and could not get past it. And I read some reviews, and I don't think I'm missing out on much by DNFing this. This is the second book that I've tried by Goldie Moldavsky. Her other book that I read, which was The Mary Shelley Club, I did read the whole thing, but ultimately felt disappointed by. And I think that would have been my feelings had I continued on with this one. So DNFing really just was the safest option, unfortunately, because this cover is also stunning. But I do have to return it to the library, and I will probably never think of it again. So those are all of the books that I loved, hated, and DNF'd during the month of June. Let me know what you guys picked up. I'm very curious to know. I might be adding some books onto my TBR based on your recommendations because I always love getting told about books that other people loved. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.